Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Digital Pen Pals podcast. I'm your host, Zach Schertz. I am an illustrator artist. I am an artist of many hats. I do a lot of different things like video content creation, like you see here on this podcast or on my personal YouTube channel, which is also linked on this channel on YouTube below. Yeah, we're here for another episode. I hope everyone's doing well. As you can tell, potentially from the title or whatever thumbnail I end up using for this, this episode is just me. And I am trying to be okay with that because I feel like having a guest for the podcast is super useful and super helpful because it's not just like me, talking about my perspective on things, which can be good and interesting. But I like having other people to kind of, talk back and forth between. And so, this week I kind of struggled to schedule another interview. Those things are kind of hard. I mean, my ideal idea is to be able to have, like interviews lined up left and right and to be able to have like a plethora of backup interviews to, start scheduling. So that way it's a little less stressful per week for me for the podcast logistically. But that's just being real with you guys because the podcast, I try to be as real as possible with you guys because it's literally just me with a microphone and a computer. That's it. Like I do the networking, I find people to interview, and that's just how this works. And anyone can do the same thing I am, and many people have. So just FYI out there, if you're ever interested in making your own podcast, just go for it. Hit me up. I will let you know how to do it. It's very simple actually. But I figured this week I was thinking about what I could potentially talk about because I just didn't want to miss another week of posting. So I figured, you know what, it's a good time to kind of reflect on things and kind of have a little bit of an idea of what to talk about. So I have a few notes here. I don't really have a video to this audio on YouTube like I have recently been doing, which let me know in the comments what you guys think of the video format. Do you guys like that? Do you enjoy seeing the artists in person on camera? Or I don't know. Let me know what you think. I find it interesting. I like watching podcasts that have video. I think it's kind of fun to see, the interactions between people and to see what people look like. I think that's always really interesting besides just audio. But this week I just decided to go just to audio like it was before for just this week. I have a few notes here actually that I've been thinking about as I've been planning this podcast. So I have a few questions for you guys up ahead. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff this episode. So hopefully it will kind of maybe make you think about your own art journey as it stands right now, where you are in the art journey. And again, I'm no like super professional to be able to say this is how you do art or this is how you're supposed to do things or, these are just some thoughts that I've been having and hopefully this can be kind of a creative conversation here. And hopefully I'll be able to hear your guys' thoughts on this in the comment section. I would love to continue the conversation there. So here are some questions to start off this whole little conversation. What are your questions about being a creative person? What questions do you have logistically or maybe just, I guess maybe like mentally or motivation wise? Like what are questions that you have logistically about being an artist or mentally about being an artist? Like, I don't know, what's the mindset of an artist? I don't know what your questions would be, but whatever questions you have, let me know in the comments section. What do you struggle with the most as a creative person? And who is your creative role model if you have one? For instance, you could be like, my favorite creative role model is like Ross Draws from YouTube or something, because he's upbeat, etc., etc. And, who do you aspire to be like? And where do you guys dream of being in the next few years? And so for me, I guess I can answer some of those because I feel like as you guys are thinking about those things, I should also try to answer those things too. My questions about being a creative person is, are you ever able to find a balance between doing what you love passionately and being fulfilled and then also not feeling drained and worn down? That's something I struggle with personally. The next question, what do I struggle with? I struggle with that same question, trying to find the balance of doing stuff that brings me fulfillment, but not letting the logistical side of things stress me out to the point where I feel burnt out. Because it's happened in the past for me before. Just an example of like, trying to do everything all at once, trying to stream on Twitch, trying to do art, make YouTube videos, and also do this podcast and do TikTok. Like, it was just all too much for me, and it still feels at times that I don't really know the balance between everything, but I'm trying to figure it out slowly, And then my creative role model, I think I have a few. For one, I've mentioned him quite often, I think, on like live streams and stuff, but I love Randy Bishop. He's probably one of my biggest role models, just because he's like the most laid back, normal person I know, but his art's the most amazing thing ever. And if you don't know him, I'll probably link him down in the description. If I haven't, just look up Randy Bishop art on Instagram or pretty much anywhere. He's actually started streaming on Twitch, which is amazing. I would recommend go watching him because he'll show his whole entire process. But I had him as an art professor, and so he's kind of one of my role models, just being down to earth, but also making the most crazy art possible, I think. Yeah, I don't know that I have very many art role models besides that, as far as like a person or personality goes, but I do have lots of like art inspiration people, like, JC Leindecker's really cool, like a old traditional artist, and I can't really think of anything off the top of my head right now, but those are just some of my answers to this question. So again, let me know your answers in the questions below, and I'd love to kind of see what you guys are thinking. So this episode is like an artist checkup. Thus the questions. I kind of want to guide your thoughts to where you are creatively as a person, as an artist, or whatever it is that you do, whether it's professionally or as a hobby, or just a dream of yours that you haven't started yet. Where do you want to go? And so for me, I guess the last question, which I didn't really answer very well, where do I see myself in the next few years? I want to see myself keep doing this. I feel like logistically, like scale-wise, like all the stuff I'm doing now, but with, I guess, more people, because that's just how it works as content creators. You kind of need, the bigger following to gain any sort of like, I guess, ability to get monetization, and then eventually make that into, okay, now I can just focus on this full time and not have to worry about, money as much, which would be great. But, I don't see that happening for the next few years, at least, logistically, as I've like researched this stuff. But yeah, in the next few years, I see myself doing this, and just being a little bit better artist. Like, 5 years ago, I look at my art now that I'm doing now. 5 years ago, I would have been like, whoa, what the heck? This is crazy. I kind of want to keep progressing. I want to keep going the same direction. I feel like I'm on the path now where I feel happy, and I feel it makes the most sense for me right now in my life, where, yeah, this is where I see myself going. This is, I not only just a passion, but logistically I can see myself going this direction and just keep doing content creation. And so for me, I think that's where I would see myself. So I don't know. That's basically your art checkup this week or this month or this year, whatever you feel like doing. Yeah, I just want to ask you guys, are you having fun? Did you learn something the last few weeks? I think as artists, it's important to keep learning something. And even if it's just, I learned how to draw, I don't know, toes better or something. That's a weird example. But like, what's something kind of specific that you maybe learned that keeps you going, It's not always the biggest leaps and bounds. Sometimes it's just the smallest little improvement that will just like be like, oh, this is cool. If I learn this, I wonder what I'll learn next week, And so basically these questions are, again, your artist checkup. How are you? Where are you at right now? Where do you see yourself? I think it's always good to assess where you are and where you're trying to go, and to remember your motives. And I think, like I think I stated a few episodes back on episode 20, where I kind of talked about how I fell kind of almost out of love with doing art. I almost kind of lost myself for a while. And I still kind of struggle with keeping myself on that balance of like not getting burnt out to the point where I don't want to do any of the creative stuff that I've been trying to pursue, whether that's art, YouTube, whatever. It's all like it's just held together by twine, it feels like. I feel like at any moment something can just tip me over, and then I I don't know. It feels kind of scary where you want to keep going, but you feel like at any moment you could get burnt out or just unmotivated. And so I think it's also interesting to kind of like check in into like the psyche of like what it's like being a creative person, because it's kind of crazy. And I feel like collectively we can all kind of agree with each other that there's some points that I have here that I think are really worthwhile looking into, because the more you understand yourself, the better you're able to go through your life. You can make better decisions because you understand how your brain operates, who you are, what types of weaknesses or strengths you have, and you can make decisions based off of those strengths and weaknesses, and to be able to improve. So I hope this kind of all starts to make a little bit more sense. I feel like it's a little incoherent, but I feel like it all kind of has a funneling point where it boils down to improving as an artist and be able to do that in a better way, I guess, if that makes sense. So like for me, I feel like the weaknesses that I have can also be strengths, and the strengths that I have can also be weaknesses. It just depends how you flip the coin. And I have just a few little characteristics that I think basically overall describe a typical artist or creative person. And whether or not you see that extremely in your life, or maybe a minute way you see it having an effect in your life. But for me, I feel like these are things that could generally describe most people as artists. And one of those things is hyperfocus. So as creative people, we can be hyperfocused. This kind of happens with a lot of people that might have like ADHD, other things like that. It's kind of interesting because you think, oh, ADHD means you're distracted by everything or whatever, right? You can't focus. But a lot of times it's actually, I mean, I'm no doctor. I'm not one that suffers from ADHD. So this is just kind of an overgeneralization, of course. But usually when you have ADHD, you're able to focus everything onto one thing easier or more frequently than other people. So it's not that you're distracted, but that as soon as you're interested in something, you can hyperfixate and become obsessed with that one thing. And so for me, that has been a struggle as I've been trying to find a balance between everything. And of course, it's not to say you're hyperfixated, so that means you have ADHD. But I'm just saying, generally as artists, we can tend to hyperfixate on things, hyperfixate on whether positives or bad things. Oh my gosh, I love doing art. I want to do it every day. I want to look at more art. I want to draw hands, like hyperfixate on something like that, right? Or vice versa, hyperfixate on maybe, oh man, my hands, I can't draw hands. I can't draw this. I can't do this. I don't know how to do that yet. Oh my gosh, that's too hard to learn. And you can hyperfixate on being your own critic, you know? So it can kind of go multiple ways, however your experience in your life, like let me know, of course. I want this to be like open conversation. But I feel like that's something that us as artists struggle with. One of the other things is something called an interpersonal relationship. And it's something that I kind of learned through one of my college courses, which I'm sure most people kind of customly go through college, or maybe in high school. Sometimes you'll take a class about sort of psychology of your interpersonal relationship with yourself or other people. It's sort of a psychological thing. So your relationship with yourself, like your inner voice, is basically what that is. And a lot of times we can become hypercritical and become like fixated on what we don't have or what we can't do versus what we can do. And yeah, it's kind of like an interesting thing where I feel like a lot of people, especially growing up, you see a lot of artists will just kind of give up and decide, oh, well, I can only draw stick figures, so I can't become an artist. And they quit. I've seen people not do art and then all of a sudden get into it and become great artists. And I think it's interesting to see that no matter who you are, where you are in life, like anyone can become an artist. Anyone can really do anything. Like you can learn any subject, you can do anything, except maybe math, because math's just horrible. Am I right? No, I'm just kidding. I personally don't like math, so that's like my inside joke with myself. But anyone can learn anything. that's a fact. If you want to do something and you have motivation, all it takes is just consistently trying to learn that thing. And, in X amount of time, you're going to figure it out. You're going to learn how to do it. And it's a lot of those people that don't have that drive or the interest in art, they don't pursue it. And so what happens? They become stagnant. They drop it, they leave it, and they never think about it again. They title themselves as, oh, I'm not artistic. I'm like, well, you could be. Oh, I can't sing. Well, you could be. I mean, you could do anything. And that's the cool part about that. So, like I said, there's like pros and cons to both of these. They can either be something that is a positive or a negative in your life, So I think being critical of yourself and being able to analyze, like we're kind of doing during this episode, is good. It can be good. If you overdo it, just like the balance and everything, if you overdo being self-critical, you kind of fall into that rut of saying, oh, I'm not good enough. This isn't working out the way I thought. I can't learn this. I can't. A lot of I can'ts. And not a lot of, oh, but I could, or I can try. And so I think it's good to look inwards and be able to figure out, like the qualities about yourself that, you like and things about yourself you don't. And you can be able to, hold on to things that are good and positive about yourself and figure out, well, what's the way that works best for me to be able to improve. And I feel like for me, when I fell out of love with art, I was so stressed about doing artwork on live streaming because I felt like if I didn't have an idea or a project lined up and I just turned on the camera and started like, oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to draw today. Let's just start doodling stuff around. And I felt kind of stressed out in that. And so what I kind of had to do was take a step back and give myself the time, because I had to be more patient with myself than I wanted to be. I wanted to be hard on myself. I want to be like, yeah, okay, come on, let's just draw. Just do it. You'll get into it. You'll get better, whatever. But I kind of realized that tactic wasn't really working for me at the time. And every situation is different for everybody. So that's why I'm saying you have to find what works for you. And so for me, I had to take a step back. Had to be like, okay, I'm allowing myself to take a break. It's okay to not want to draw right now. I'm not going to force myself to draw. But the day I have an idea where I'm like, okay, I sort of feel like maybe I could draw. Cool, let's draw for a few minutes. Okay, done. Sick. Not really great, but at least I drew. Next day. Okay, I don't really feel like drawing. The next day. Okay, well, let's draw a little bit. Maybe I'm a little more optimistic about being able to draw better. And then slowly over time, I was able to build up that motivation to now where pretty much every night I want to draw something. And that's whether I have time or I don't. And a lot of the times where I don't have time, it's sad because I'm like, I would love to stay up drawing, but you know what? It's already like 1 a.m. I know I need to get some sleep. Let's not do this. And so for me, that's how I kind of figured out how to help myself, is to be a little bit more flexible and not being so stern, because I am so self-critical and I look into my own life and I judge myself too harshly. And so I had to take a step back and be like, it's okay to miss posting a YouTube video. It's okay not to draw today. It's okay, whatever it is. And that kind of helped me feel a little bit more comfortable with my own self and like what I was doing. Because realistically, what we do as artists, like unless we're getting commissioned or something, we're not really told by anybody to do these things. No one's telling us to draw. No one's telling us to make videos. No one's telling me to make this podcast. It all comes from us. And so if you can find that inner drive, maybe you don't struggle with that as much as maybe I do, but if you are, and you're like me, you kind of have to give yourself a little bit of space and let yourself build up that motivation to keep drawing again. And I think one of the last interesting things that I think all of these kind of relate to each other. It's kind of interesting. I like finding connections, and I like thinking about stuff like super detailed. That's kind of like one of my things. I like learning about things that are related to each other. And so I think it's kind of interesting how, to me, I don't know, this episode feels kind of confusing. I'm sorry if it is, but I feel like everything that I have said up until now is funneling and is all connected to each other. and it's not just like one separate subject, but it's all interlocked, and there's like a million ways to think about it. But I'm hoping that at least, it's not really what I say, but maybe what thoughts are coming to your mind at this time that are more important than what I'm saying. So I feel like there's a connection with art block, right? It's a very common term that's thrown around amongst artists and creative people. I have creative block, I have art block. And so I am of the opinion, now this might be controversial, I'm sure, but art block doesn't exist in the way that you think it does. So let me explain. Think about where your creativity and everything comes from, right? There is a line between having talent and skill. And a lot of the times, this is how I see things. People are like, oh, you're so talented. Well, actually, if you saw the amount of hours that I put into practicing drawing and learning from other artists, it's actually technically a skill. It's not a talent. Where that line becomes blurred is kind of interesting. So I feel like a lot of us start off with maybe a we have both talent and skill. And I feel like for me, talent is kind of this thing where you have an interest or intrigue in something. So take, for instance, art. A lot of us artists start off really young, typically, and we have a fascination with it. I remember when I was growing up, sorry, I gotta take a drink of water real quick. Water reminder, guys. Drink water. Sorry. When I talk for a while, my throat tends to get dry. So for me growing up, I remember kind of always having a fascination with making things. I always thought it was so cool in school, learning about arts and crafts and, oh, this is how you make this. I'm like, oh, that's so fun that you made it out of paper plates. You made a butterfly or something out of paper by just cutting it and it's symmetrical. Like, whoa, that's so cool. Snowflakes, things like that. And growing up, I had two older brothers. They were pretty both sufficient in being able to draw and doodle things pretty well. And so for me, that was always something that was like a driving fascination for me, to be able to witness firsthand, like my brothers just doodling, maybe in like church or something. And so I remember I kind of explained this in a video on my YouTube channel. I think it was like a 100 subscriber special video that I did a while back. But I kind of explained that I feel like is like one of the first memories that I have of being like, oh yeah, I want to like learn this more. And I was in church, and I was probably about like maybe 5 or 6, round about there. And I remember I liked Power Rangers, of course, OG Power Rangers, from the 90s. And I had a red Power Ranger, or not. I had a red action figure of the Red Ranger, but I also had like a blue one and a green one, I think, or something. But I think one of the action figures I was playing with, I told one of my brothers, hey, can you draw this? Because I'd seen him draw some stuff. As a kid, you're just curious, like, hey, can you draw this? Like, you just throw out challenges to people. You're like, hey, yo, can you do this? Cool, that's possible. So I basically challenged my brother to do that because I was just curious as a child. And he took that 3-dimensional object and he drew it on a piece of paper. And I was like, dude, that's crazy. What the heck? So he like drew on the helmet of the guy or whatever. And I was like, that's crazy. And since then I just remember always liking even just coloring. I like the feeling of doing something myself. I like the sense of accomplishment. Whether I colored inside the lines or not, I don't know. But yeah, for me, that's like where my creativity started. It was inspired by a lot of like shows growing up, like Out of the Box. Maybe I'm an oldie, and this is kind of older for some of the maybe younger people, but Out of the Box was a great show. The premise of the show, if you don't know, they basically start off the whole intro. You should look up the show, by the way. To get an idea of the show, it's pretty fun. They build a box clubhouse, and they go inside, and of course it's like a studio. I mean, but as a kid, you're like, whoa, that's so cool. They go inside this box fort that they make. It turns into this big, giant place with like a slide and stuff like that. And they do singing and they do arts and crafts and stuff like that. I remember one specific episode, for example, they showed you how to make like a parachute out of like a little like sippy, like a, what do you call those things? It's like a little paper cup that you use for like bathrooms. Like if you're like brushing your teeth, you use this like little paper Dixie cup to like get water and spit out the water. So they would use something like that, some string and like tissue paper to make like a parachute. And I remember making that. I think that was so cool. And so shows like that just kind of helped build my interest in creativity, I think, was like the core of me. And so I think about where your sense of wonder, your source of motivation to become creative in any sort of matter. Where did that come from? Was it from a movie? Was it from kid TV shows like me, or influence of people around you? I think that's important to kind of like figure out, because then you're better able to figure out your motivation now. Is your motivation different than it was when you were a child? And of course it probably is. But I think it's important to, not to say that your motivation now is not correct and your inner childhood motivation was the pure correct thing. But I think there's some ability to connect both of those things, to analyze who you were as a child creatively and who you are now. Obviously, motives are different. I mean, we're all trying to make money. We're all trying to make this into a career, I assume, most people listening. And we're trying to figure things out realistically. As a child, you have no reality. It's like, oh, I want to make something cool. There's no purpose for it. There's nothing besides the sense of wonder, curiosity, and seeing if you can make the thing happen. And now you're connecting it to a more maybe financial or more logistical way of thinking. Now, not only are you making art out of curiosity, but also you're trying to make art that will get likes on Instagram. You're trying to make videos on TikTok that'll get views. It kind of starts to get a little polluted with the ideas and the things you just have to go through as you grow up and you get into the real world, quote unquote. And I think if you lose that connection to the whimsical, just for kicks, just for fun, childhood views of creativity and art, and you let the, I guess, more financial, logistical sense of art come into place, then your creativity kind of gets a little cut off. If you don't make things just because, for fun, for like whatever reason, then like what are you doing, If you're not just making some whimsical, dumb art thing that you're not even thinking about it getting views, you're just like, this is a dumb idea, I want to make this thing happen just for fun. Instead of, I want to make this thing because it'll get X amount of views, or I'll be able to make X amount of money or something. And there's a balance between everything, and that's something I struggle with still, is just the general balance of everything. But yeah, what's your motivation in art? What's your source? Where is it coming from? And why are you making things? And as much as I'm asking you guys this, I'm asking myself these questions, because I think it's a really tough conversation to have with yourself to kind of think about. And, I highly recommend like writing things down. Maybe like if there's anything that you're thinking about, write it down, because trust me, you will forget it. Unless you have the perfect memory in the world, you won't remember your answers. You won't remember any of this. So I think it's important to write those things down. And I think for me, after this episode, I'll sit down and write down some of the things that I was thinking about talking about during this episode, to kind of keep myself checked in, to keep myself in check with the core of why I'm making art and why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because I feel like if I lose that sense of wonder and that sense of where I came from and where I'm going, then the future doesn't really make sense. It doesn't pan out. And I could lose myself easily and be like, oh, I just quit everything. I'll quit doing this podcast. I'll quit doing YouTube videos. I'll quit doing TikTok, Twitch, whatever. And I feel like that could happen if I'm not careful. And so I think from time to time, it'll be good to do this. And just to kind of assess ourselves and to figure out where we are now and where we're going. And I think we're going to feel a lot more confident because we have thought things through and we feel better about where we're going. And so for me, I feel like that's kind of where I'm trying to get to. is to find that core sense of curiosity and wonder. And I think that's what's exciting for me personally about posting things online, is because I have no idea. I have no idea what will happen if I post this next video, if I post this next TikTok, if I post this next podcast. I don't know. Something might happen. Maybe the next time I go streaming, all of a sudden I'll get rated by a bajillion people, and that would be the coolest thing. It's the sense of not knowing what's around the corner that I think is why it's so interesting to do this, to see if I do this, what could happen. And I think if you don't try, then you'll never know. And that's the biggest regret people have in their lives is not trying. And I'm not saying that every single dream you've ever dreamed of is something you should pursue. That's up to each person individually to decide whether it's worthwhile or if it's too risky. I don't know. But for me, I felt like I've been able to choose things that require not really anything. I just post stuff for free, and hopefully it can turn into something eventually down the road where it can become a career for me. I don't know. And for everybody else listening, that you have your individual idea of where you hope to be in the next few years or next year. I don't know, whatever your long-term plans are. And I think that we all have that same equal ability. And I hope that this podcast is kind of like a little corner of safety where we can talk about stuff like this, where we feel comfortable with each other, that this is a community, because without the ability to communicate with one another, with other people that share similar interests, it's hard to kind of figure these things out. And I feel like over these last around 24 episodes, I have learned so much from other artists, and I felt a lot more confident in myself and in the ability to pursue the things that I want to. It wasn't until about 2018 when I had to go to a convention for school as not study abroad, but I forget the name of it, travel study. Had to do a travel study, or it was some other option, but I chose travel study. Went to convention, CTN, Creative Talent Network. And that was the first time I had interaction besides college with actual artists in the real world trying to make it. And I had the privilege of meeting a few artists that I had admired. For example, like Ross Draws, Aaron Blaze, who is used to be animator on Disney and stuff like that, has done a bunch of animation stuff and does YouTube as well. And Jake Parker, other people. And it was just surreal to see them in person and be able to ask them a few questions. And for me, I went on that trip kind of not knowing where I was going and what I wanted to do. I had this sense of idea of I want to combine all the things that I want to do, but I don't know if that's going to work or if that's just too confusing. There's too many things. I love art, I love video stuff, and I don't know how to really combine those things besides maybe some examples of what I've seen from Jake Parker and other people that I've posted on YouTube and seen that work. And I'm I don't know where this is going. And I, when I left there, I kind of had the feeling and confirmation to me, at least personally, that this is what I'm supposed to do. I have no idea, but this is the only thing that's ever felt this right for me to do. And I don't know the pathway there, but I know that if I try, I'll be able to figure it out. And I don't have to have the answers all at once. And it's okay to go step by step. And so for me, each video, each TikTok that I make is just another little baby step towards something, towards the next thing. I don't know what that is. And I think it's important to assess ourselves and to think about what we want in life. Does it align with what we're trying to do now? And if not, maybe change some things up. Maybe drop some bad habits that we might have that are keeping us or preventing us from having a more positive mindset or having a better attitude towards doing artwork or having more time to make art. I don't know. Each of you guys know the individual things. I just hope to kind of bring up that thought of potentially thinking about how to do things differently if you need to. And I feel really happy and lucky that here on social media in general. Like there's always all sorts of negatives to social media, but YouTube also being a platform of social media, or podcasts, social media. I am grateful that it is free. Essentially, you can create your own channel for pretty much no cost, financially. You can post TikToks for free. I mean, obviously you have to get the phone and you have to have like service for your phone or something, but essentially the essential core of it is free. Besides having a decent amount of phone, decent phone with some camera quality, it's all free. It's all up for grabs, and I think that's what's really fascinating. And again, with times how they are now, with social media have grown so far, it used to be really easy to be discovered, but nowadays we're all making essentially the high quality videos or TikToks or artwork that people would be looking for 10 years ago. But now it's a lot more saturated. There's a lot more people in the market or on social media trying to do the same exact thing you are, to get discovered, to be seen, to gain attention. And that can be kind of like blurring to us. And I feel like I felt that too in my life, where I've been so hard on looking at the analytics of any social media platform I have, whether that's looking here on the podcast and being like, oh, how many views am I getting per hour? Oh, and people aren't watching. Oh, people aren't commenting, this and that. And, that stuff just kind of like messes with your mind and kind of blurs the reasoning behind making all of these things. And so I kind of just want to challenge myself and challenge you guys to kind of just at least evaluate things. Think about where you are now, where you want to be, and why you're making art. I know it's this is like a huge kind of topic and kind of a lot of moving parts to it. And I hope that this podcast kind of made sense whatsoever, hopefully. I just feel like that's kind of what I wanted to talk about and to kind of reflect on. And I am just overall grateful for the ability to even try this stuff. I'm grateful for, you guys listening. Sometimes it's kind of like weird to be sitting right here at my desk and recording this podcast, talking to a mic. There's nobody around me. It's just me in my room. I'm alone. And it's kind of weird to think that, I don't know how many people end up listening or watching this podcast. I don't know. And so it's kind of a weird, surreal disconnection of thinking how cool it is to be able to do stuff like this and to have these kind of conversations, whether that's with you guys as the audience and the community, or other artists that I'm able to interview. And I'm grateful for every artist that has come on here on the podcast so far. Had about 4 interviews since basically starting over on the podcast. And it's been great. It's been awesome. It's been stressful, but honestly, once the interviews are up and posted and I'm able to share it with other people, it's good. It feels great. It does require a little bit of sacrifice to do the interviews, to set things up, to make sure that I have the time set aside for them, to quickly put the videos into, or put the audio and video together, and to post it onto YouTube, put all the descriptions, the titles. Like, there's a lot of things that go into posting all this stuff. It's not just hit send on the video, post it to YouTube. It's like I have to think about the title. I have to make a thumbnail. Like, it's a whole thing. And that's not just here, but that's on my YouTube channel. That's TikTok a little bit too. But overall, it's been worthwhile, and I'm still trying to find the balance between doing everything that I want to do without burning myself out, without getting overly worked or overly stressed. And I hope you guys can be kind to yourselves. Please be kind to yourselves. Don't be so critical of yourself that you lose sense of the good that you have in your life, the good natures that you have, because if you lose that, then it's kind of sad. And life is meant to be positive and is meant to be a happy thing. It's not meant to be sad. And so I hope that you guys can feel that, and feel that you can be patient with yourself, and you don't need to figure everything out, but just at least think of one thing you could change that would improve your life. And even those things in your life that are non-art or creative related, are good things. If you feel stressed out because you look at too much social media, even though it's not art related, you can kind of maybe try to look at social media less or something, for example, and you'll feel better. And because of that, it has other consequences like, oh, you're happier during the day. And because you're happier, you feel more motivated. Because you're more motivated, you're more productive and you start making more art, and everything has a domino effect. So yeah, I hope that this podcast made sense again. I know I'm kind of reiterating myself a little bit, but let me know in the comment section if there's any part of this video that you found interesting or would like to talk about more. Let me know. I would love to keep making episodes like this, to have conversations with everybody, to kind of talk about these real life art things that we go through. It is kind of meta because we're talking about making art while making art content. It's kind of meta. I don't know. Like the content is about making content art. I don't know. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to stop now because I've already diluted this thing enough. But thank you guys so much for watching. And I love you guys. Thank you guys for listening to this podcast. And I hope you found it interesting. Or maybe this was just some cool white background noise for drawing or making whatever you're doing. Anyway, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And thank you guys for being patient with me, for maybe not always posting an interview, but sometimes having little conversations like this with you guys. And I'm thankful for it, and thankful for the opportunity to even do this at all. Thank you guys so much for the support. I sincerely mean that. I can't imagine this working without you guys, and it's been awesome to try to pursue this. And yeah, it's good. It's good to remember why you're grateful for things. And thank you guys for watching. It means a lot. And I'll catch you guys in the next week's episode. Peace.